Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Believe It or Not Bible Edition. My name is Pastor Marie Sager, and I am the pastor at St. Timothy's Lutheran in Aston, Pennsylvania. And today, for our episode of Believe It or Not Bible Edition, we are looking at a story that you may be thinking, hey, I think I might know that story, but you might not know some of the details. Today, we are looking at Jacob's family. Jacob is, you might know, is also known as Israel, but that comes much later on in his story. Today, we are going to look at his wives. Yes, I said wives. He has two of them. And then also his wives' servants. And those are the four women who make up the mothers of his 13 children. This story can be found in Genesis chapter 29 and 30. At the beginning of chapter 29, Jacob has set out and he is going to find somewhere for him to live, to find a new wife. And so he comes across this well and he says, hey, does anybody know Laban? And they said yes. And actually, here comes his daughter. And so Rachel was coming down as she was one of the shepherds and she was caring for the sheep. And when Jacob saw her, it was, one could say, love at first sight. He kissed her and said, aha, where is your father? I must go and talk to him. And so Jacob goes and talks to Laban and says, I want to marry your daughter. So Laban says, okay, but you're going to have to work for me for 7 years. And so Jacob does. And at the end, he is there and he thinks he is in his marriage bed with his new wife, Rachel. However, Laban has put in Leah, and so Jacob is quite upset that his new bride is not who he thought it was. And so he goes to Laban, Jacob goes to Laban and says, I worked for you for 7 years for your daughter, Rachel, but you have given me the first one. And Laban says, well, I can't just marry off my second one before the first one. So because Jacob loved Rachel the most, he said, all right, I'll work for you for another 7 years, and then I will have both of them as my wife. And so Laban agreed. And so then he works for a few more years after that as kind of with their family. And then Jacob decides it's time for them to go out on their own. During this time, when they are kind of out on their own, they are beginning their family. Now, at this time, Rachel cannot have any children, and her sister, Leah, has had 4 different children. She has had Reuben, Simon, Levi, and Judah. And after these first 4 boys, Rachel gets so upset that she's like, just kill me now, God. If I can't have babies, I don't, what is there to live for? So she tells Jacob, here, sleep with my wife, with my servant, Bilhah. So then Jacob does, and we get the next 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. So Leah says, well, wait, what about my servant? So she gives her servant Zilpah to Jacob, and we get the next 2 sons, Gad and Asher. And it is only finally after all 10 of these children, plus one girl, Dinah, after all of these children have been born, only then is Rachel able to have two children. Her firstborn is Joseph, who many of you might know from that amazing musical, Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. That is this Joseph, his mother, Rachel, and then his youngest brother, Benjamin. And so we have one of the very first stories, first families that is polygamous, but also is polyamorous. They have polygamy of more than one wife, and polyamorous is more than one kind of in a relationship. And so with that, there is both the two that Jacob is married to, but then also the other two are a part of the family and as the mothers of his children. And so you may be thinking, that's so, I really thought just one, right? But I encourage you to go in and read for yourself Genesis 29, 30, even into 31, and to read their story and to hear what each of the children's names mean, and also just to hear a little bit more about Jacob, who we hear, as I said, is Israel later on, and we kind of hear of the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes of Jacob, or the 12 sons of Jacob are the heads of each of those tribes. So I invite you to just go in and dig into your Bible. There are so many stories that are out there that you may be thinking, I never knew. And so this is our episode of Believe It or Not Bible Edition, where we look at the first family of 12, technically 13. Bye, everybody.